All right, Mr. D, let's talk a little bit about rootstocks. And let's define that for the people. What do we mean when we talk about rootstocks?
Okay, rootstocks are usually a seedling plant that you graft more desirable types of plants onto that rootstock. And the rootstocks are chosen because they are more prolific. They're hardier, faster growing than the plant that you're grafting onto that rootstock. You can graft them, you can bud them. There are several different ways of actually, creating, a plant on rootstock. But it's very important that you choose plants that need to be on rootstock. You need to choose a plant that is on rootstock. And I can, apples and peaches and plums and nectarines and pears are examples of plants that are grafted or budded and onto rootstock. And if you just plant a seed of one of those plants that I talked about, especially with apples and pears, number one, the rootstock is not going to be very strong. The tree will probably not grow as fast, will probably not do well, and will not last as long as if it had been grafted onto rootstock. And number two, you don't know what variety it is because they were cross-pollinated, and the fruit that you get is probably a cross between the parent and the parents of that fruit. So that's why, if you're going to go to the trouble of planting a peach seed or a pear seed or an apple seed, you'll be a lot better off to go out and buy a grafted variety. You can order them and you can get the real small plants they will ship them to you, and you can stick them in the ground and they'll do really well.
So, and that's the route that you would take?
That's the route I would take. I would strongly encourage it. And there are some plants that don't require rootstocks. Let me go down a list here, and I'll talk a little bit about some of the different terminologies and some of the different names of rootstocks. But the apples, we started talking about that. If you don't have a lot of space and you want to grow an apple tree, then you probably would want to go with one of the dwarf apples. And dwarf apples are on Malling number 9. It's Malling, Malling 9, or Malling 26. That's the names of the dwarfing rootstocks. And if you graft a variety onto that dwarfing rootstock, it will be small. Now you will need to stake or trellis that apple. And so it's not going to be a traditional looking apple tree. It's going to look more like a vine because it's going to grow up and you got to support it because the rootstock is not strong enough to support that tree in a standalone situation. Now, if you go to a different rootstock, semi-dwarf, Malling 7, MM106, and MM11 are semi-dwarf, and those trees, let me see, I believe, those trees can stand alone, and you would prune them to a central leader system, just like we've always pruned apple trees.
So no trellis for those?
No trellis for the semi-dwarf or the standard. And the standard is there are several seedlings out there that are rootstock for the seedling trees. Pears, there's a standard rootstock that almost all pears are grafted to. So again, you don't need to plant the pear seed, but you need to make sure that you go to the standard rootstock for pears. Peach and nectarine, the two most common. There are two standard rootstocks for peaches and nectarines, and that's Lovell and Halford. Those are the rootstock plants that peaches and nectarines are grafted to. Plums are also grafted to Lovell and Halford. They're also grafted to a rootstock called myrobalan. And as far as there being a difference, I'd say any of these rootstocks would work. If I bought something, I would want to make sure that I knew what it was grafted to. In some situations, when I worked and lived down in South Alabama, we had a very, very heavy nematode pressure, and there was a Nemagard rootstock that you could buy peaches and plums and nectarines that they were grafted to, which were a little bit more resistant to nematodes. I don't see that listed in our Tennessee recommendations. And I'm taking this out of home tree fruit plan, Dr. Lockwood at the University of
good
Tennessee came up with this. I'm just reading out of this publication, SP 307, and I'm sure you've got that available in your office.
We have it. And let me ask you something else about rootstock. So does that have anything to do with like disease or insect pest resistance?
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. I think it has just the most to do with the growth, the hardiness, and the length of life of that plant.
Good.
But there's a rootstock for cherries, Mazard and Mahalab. Quince has quince is an example of one that you really don't. You go with rooted cuttings, and it's a tough enough plant that it doesn't have to be grafted. Same thing with a pawpaw.
How about
if you want to grow a pawpaw, you can go with a seedling or seeds on a pawpaw. You don't have to graft those. Mulberry is another example of one that you don't have to graft, and you can go with seedlings or rooted cuttings.
So it's strong enough.
And the persimmon, American persimmon, is a very strong plant. You can plant that American persimmon seed, and you'll have a good plant. If you're trying to grow the Oriental persimmons, they need to be grafted to American persimmon rootstock.
Okay.
And that's pretty much all we've got here. Let me mention a couple of things.
Okay.
Again, I want to repeat that the trees on the Malling 7A and Malling 26 and Malling 9 rootstocks should be staked or trellised.
Okay.
9, 26, and 7A is one of the semi-dwarfs. So one of the semi-dwarfs needs to be trellised or staked. So that's why you need to really make sure you know what rootstock your plants are on. And I mean, you can get Jonathan apple on any of these rootstocks. It's the same apple. The leaf will look the same, the fruit will be the same, but the size of the tree will be different based upon the rootstock that you're planting on.
That's interesting.
It says they do recommend irrigation, especially on the dwarfing rootstock. They need irrigation probably more than because the root system is not strong.
Right. That's right. It makes sense. It does.
And then just a note here, most apple varieties need to be cross-pollinated by another variety. However, there are 3 apple varieties that have sterile pollen. Mutsu, Jonagold, and Winesap have sterile pollen, and they're not any good for pollinating purposes. Bruce is a plum that has sterile pollen, and so it's not good for cross-pollination. Something you need to know if you're planting these things.
Well, we have a little time left, Mr. D. Can you cover for us to make sure you don't mulch over those rootstocks?
When you plant any of these fruits, and plant them in late winter, we recommend planting fruit trees in late winter, February in the Memphis Mid-South area, late February, early March is the best time to stick them in the ground. But be very sure that you plant them at the depth that they grew in the nursery. If it's a bare root plant, there's a difference in color of the tissue. The rootstock is usually 2 or 3 inches above the ground, and you'll see where that plant was budded or grafted. It'll kind of come out at kind of an angle, but do not cover that up with dirt. Do not cover it up with mulch. Make sure that you plant it at the depth that it grew in the nursery or the depth that it's growing in the pot. And don't use a post hole digger because you'll dig it too deep. You'll plant it right. It'll rain, everything will settle down, dirt will wash in on it. You didn't plant it too deep, Mother Nature planted it too deep for you. So don't dig a wide planting hole, but not too deep.
And it doesn't have to be amended.
It doesn't have to be amended. You can go with the soil that you're growing it in.
Right.
May as well start it out in the soil that you want it to grow in, because those tree roots are going to go out very quickly, way out.
That's right. Good stuff, Mr. D. We appreciate it as always.
Good deal.
Thank you much. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. To find out more information on this topic, just click on the familyplotgarden.com link in the description.